pinnacle of human perfection.
Pressure's on. Thanks a lot, Sherry. Welcome to Unbiased and On the Fence, Paranormal Frequencies. Sherry, tell us who we have.
Tonight we have my favorite, Marilynn Hughes, is back with us again.
Yay,
And
Marilynn.
I know. And she has like over 90 books. And what we were going to do is kind of focus on one of them tonight. And Marilynn, can you tell us which one it is?
Called Principles of the World Beyond Death.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a book about experiences that I had that kind of brought out some of the principles that we learn about how the world of the afterlife is different than obviously what we have here in the physical world. But we're going to be talking about one of my experiences with the Galactic Council.
Wow.
Awesome.
That's amazing.
When did this book actually come out?
I'm not sure. A few years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track. I'm sorry. We can check that out. Yeah.
So when you do your out-of-body travels like that, I guess you just kind of set intention and you could go somewhere, or you just, is it a surprise?
I generally usually set intentions. I pray a lot, and what I learned early on in my travels was that it was always good to surrender more to the will of God, because God had all sorts of things that I couldn't even think up. And so whenever I tried to set intentions or whatever, I was really limiting my experiences. So when I just kind of surrender and allow God to lead my travels and my journeys, I experience a lot more, learn a lot more, and see things that I would never have ever been able to even imagine exist.
Well, I mean, really, really,
yeah,
isn't
set
it?
an intention to go see them. So I've learned very early on to never set intentions. Just ask God, where do I need to go this time?
Right, because you want to get sent where you're needed, right? And really, isn't it the same thing during our waking time, right? I mean,
yep,
in the
true.
3D,
Yes, very much so. So yeah, that's something that I highly recommend to people, is to remember, there's a lot more a lot more out there than we can imagine. So let God lead you, and you'll see a lot more, experience a lot more, and your journeys are going to be more meaningful.
I do know there's two other out-of-body authors that I'm aware of that mentioned strange named men, like in robes or whatever. I guess it was like their guides, that they ended up finding, like they're flying or whatever, and then they noticed that they had them by the ankle or something, and they'd look back and the same guy is always there. So they had kind of like surrendered to what they wanted them to, where they wanted to take them, and they always had something really profound that they discover then, and they say what you do. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah, because there is, and if you read my books, you're going to find that the things that you see, the people that you meet, these are not things you can think up. They're going to be unexpected places, unexpected beings. So it's always good to let God lead the way. And, we do have the, guardian angels, spiritual guides, we have teachers, and all of them work together with, the royal family of God, which is, the prophets, saints, mystics, sages, and ascetics from throughout time and history and throughout all world religions and traditions who are part of, guiding our journey. And so, there's this master plan for each one of us, and we want to stick with that master plan, because that master plan is what's going to give us the most direct journey towards the goal that we set out for, when we set out on this particular incarnation.
Like what
Absolutely.
I
I've
say,
often said that. I'm
you're
sorry,
one of,
Sherry.
no, I was just going to say she's one of those too. One day everybody's going to say that when they make that list of all those people, you're going to be in it.
Well, I often say that, like, Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, when he said, not my will, your will be done.
Right.
You kind of come to this realization where if you had the wisdom of God and you knew everything God would have, your will would be one with God. It's just we're so limited
Exactly.
with our knowledge. So it's almost liberating if you can get beyond that hump to trust God with what's going to unfold for you. And I guess that's in waking in regular life, 3D life, or out of body experiences, right? I mean, to just sort of trust God's going to, give you
Very
the best
so,
experience that's going to help you grow the most, I guess.
well, yes, and one of the reasons why obedience is one of the strong teachings in many of the world religions is because of that very concept. Is because if we understood that by being obedient to our rightful superiors and therefore to God, that we are actually placing ourselves on the path of the highest thrust, the highest progress, we would be so much more likely. We always look at following orders or following obedience or following any kind of law, moral law, ethical laws. Well, I want to be free. I want to be free. We don't understand that there is actually, that's exactly what God's laws do for us. They actually give us the freedom, because as we attain to these higher states, we are losing this spiritual weight of these vices and things, and we actually are going higher. It's the acceptance of and the willingness to go within that will of God that gives us freedom. And that is one of the big obstacles. If people can get over that hump and realize, wow, it's really a lot simpler than I'm making it. Just surrendering to God's will is not giving up freedom. It's actually embracing it.
Oh, that's so good, Marilyn. That is so good because it is. It's really flipped on its head from what people typically think. You're liberated
Yep.
when you go with the will of God, and it's not like, and I guess that's the ego, well, I want this, I want the fast car, and I want, maybe if you kind of got that lower kind of earthly mentality, maybe of just sort of, maybe, just material things, you know what I mean? So that would be like the
Yep.
ego. But for the most part, when we sort of grow up and grow beyond that and we realize that there's more that we should be doing here, then you realize you do want to be in alignment with the will of God. That's what you want. You just don't realize it because you don't have the knowledge.
Right. And, what happens is when we remove God from our lives, there's this gaping hole that, comes into our lives. I recently, heard from one of my spiritual readers who had an experience where they were given almost like a near-death type of experience. It was an out-of-body experience, but they were allowed to look into their future, and they saw their life and the emptiness that it would have without God in it. And it was pretty mind-blowing to them, because
Yeah.
we think that, oh, we don't need God, and it's so hard to actually, put into words the emptiness that actually plots out for us, because, having God in your life is really the compass. He's the captain. He's the ship. He's the sail. He is all those things. And so
The
if you remove
harmonizer
that,
almost. It's
yes, everything that you're seeking, because,
yeah.
and a lot of times, one of the things people don't always understand when they're removing God from their life is that this journey that we're taking is a spiritual journey. No matter what you're doing in your life at this time, you can take God out of your life. You have that free will to do that. You can become an atheist, you can become an agnostic, you can say, well, I don't have to do that. But the bottom line is that when we come into incarnation, into this physical realm, it is a spiritual journey. There is a spiritual purpose, and it is formed and made by God. So when we remove the creator of our substance, then we literally put ourselves in a position of potentially just standing still, literally not being able to move forward in our progress in this life, and having no meaning, really. And so that's part of that's part of what people find is missing. You can't remove the very substance of your existence and have it still remain meaningful. And God is the substance of our existence here. The spiritual constructs, the spiritual things that we are here to learn and to experience and to engage in are non-negotiable. You know what I mean? So, we can't get around that. We can ignore it and we stand still, so we can do that, but that's standing still. So that's when, a lot of times when people are feeling, gosh, my life feels so meaningless, blah, 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 that can be oftentimes be sometimes the result of choosing not to allow the force that comes with life, which is really the substance of God that comes behind us as a soul. We have to have that. That's the engine, that's the gas, that's the fuel, that's everything. That's the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. So it's not like suggestive. It's very clear. This is what you've got to follow this way. You got to go that way, or you stand still. It becomes very meaningless, very, very shallow. You got to have the fire that fuels the journey.
So you feel like when Jesus said that, he was saying, "Do like I do, follow what I'm doing," and as a role model, more like that, in that sense, when he said that.
I think that Jesus was saying a lot of things, because when Christ was saying those types of things, he was also laying out what became the sacraments of the Catholic Church. So when he had the Last Supper, he was laying out for the apostles what became the Eucharistic sacrifice of the Holy Mass. When he said to Peter, when he told Peter, whatsoever you shall bind on earth shall be bound, and whatsoever you shall loose shall be loosed, he was laying the framework for the sacrament of confession. Obviously, he was laying the framework for the sacraments of baptism. He also, all these other things, if you go back to the writings of the early church fathers, which, goes into the apostles, the writings of the apostles, of what they actually learned from Christ. Jesus was asking them to watch what he did, in part because he was teaching us about the moral law, the life of an ethical life, but he was also teaching them about the sacraments that would form the church, and he also said, upon this rock I will build my church, and that's exactly what he did. Peter, the first pope, the apostle, Peter meant rock, and of course Peter was the rock. So there were so many things that he was doing when he asked them to watch and observe what he was doing. You know what I'm saying? Even when he had, one of his first miracles was performed at a wedding. There was a great deal of meaning in that. He was showing the holiness of the marital sacrament. That is also a sacrament. You know what I mean? So, I could go into all these things,
The water to wine. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's all these things that led to the sacraments of the early church, which was watching what he was doing.
So
does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally. So this journey that you took in this specific book, how did it start off with this council? You said it was the Galactic Council. Is who you met with in the book? Did I get the name right?
This one, I this one, the experience we're going to talk about is the one with the Galactic Council, and it I felt like it's an interesting experience because it shows it gives people an interesting eye view into the Galactic Council, but it also shows that even in the Galactic Council, the issues of vice and purification. So this shows us that these issues are relevant in other worlds, extraterrestrial worlds as well. It also includes, the in breath and the out breath of the Blessed Mother. So we see that there is this importance of, the Holy Mother of God and of Christ that is relevant even in the Galactic Council. And when you bring this together with other experiences I've had experiences indicating the possibility, it seems, that, the Blessed Mother originates in the Pleiades. And I've had this beautiful other experience about her where she came down from this beautiful Pleiadian ship, and she was wearing a deep purple gown with white and light, and they called her the Lady in Light. And she was very, very, very holy to them. And I remember that I was trying to get up closer, and I was just really shocked when I got up close and realized that she was the Blessed Virgin Mary. So she was not just someone holy to their people, but she was the same holy being to our people. And in this particular experience, she is playing a role in the Galactic Council.
Well, I had a knowing, it was around 2013 or 14. It was like, it was revealed to me somehow. I can't really explain it, but I was just so sure that Jesus was Pleiadian. Do you
yes,
agree with
and
that?
I that as well. Yes.
I'm so glad that that was right. I mean,
I also heard that from other sources have also said that. So it sounds like that there's been multiple people who have been told that, I think.
It was like told to me in like a download knowing thing, but I'm working on trusting those things, so this really helps me a lot what you just said, because I was like, well, wow, if she, that's cool. Okay. I'm sorry if I seem distracted. I just want to tell y'all and the audience, because they all know me too, that my son just texted me and told me not to be upset. He just found out that this is my granddaughter, Isabella, that I've never met yet. So this is a new thing. So that's why I was a bit distracted for a minute. He just texted me that in the middle of my show here. So isn't she cute?
She's adorable.
Yeah. So I'll have to go meet her and start buying some baby clothes. Okay, go ahead. I'll just take it as it comes with him, I like her name though, because I am a Bella. My grandkids call me Bella, so that'll be good. All right, carry on. So anyway, you want to take off from there, and before we get off, I just got to have you tell about that experience that you had that I was in. But you can do that later since you're on the subject of that.
Sure. Well, Shane, were you going to read that experience from Principles of the World Beyond Death, or did you just want to talk about it?
We can just talk. We both read it earlier. We can just talk about it. Or if you want to, do you want to read it? You can read it if you'd like.
I don't have it in front of me, but I'd send it to you guys because I thought you were going to read it. We can do whatever. It was an experience in the.
Do you want me to read it to them? I will.
So the listeners know what we're talking about, I guess. Maybe that might help them a little.
Yeah,
it's like
10 minutes or something.
Whatever works for you.
I just feel like I'm not a great reader, so you can, Marilyn, just stop me if it doesn't, sound good. I mean,
It'll be perfect.
okay, let's see.
Well,
It is this one. Let me get right there. Wait a minute. Okay. Almost there. Almost there.
No problem. Take your time.
Where'd it go? I got it. I promise.
Want to shout out to
Someone say
everybody in the chat. We love you guys. Thanks for being here.
Oh yeah, and you know what? I wanted to, Shane, if you want to, while I'm looking really quick, update Shira on when her thing's gonna be on, because I think they were wondering about that. Her
Yeah, they
B2H.
texted me.
Okay.
Congrats, Sherry. Shiny.
Say hi to everybody. Where is it at? It's got to be right here.
Owl medicine? April? I don't know what owl medicine is.
Why is this different?
Oh, Cisco's here.
Yay!
Journey Through the Gate Paranormal Portal Podcast.
Ask her if she heard me mention her coming on next week. Or no, that was, I was telling her, Marilyn, that before, huh?
Yeah, you're telling Marilyn.
Yeah, Cisco's coming on next week. She wrote a book. It's called We're All Children of the Afterlife.
okay.
And
Very nice.
yes, and I'm so excited to have her on. I've listened to her podcast, and then the next guest that we're having the next week is somebody that she had on her show. Why? I'm so sorry. I'm having trouble finding the last one. I don't understand this.
Okay, well, we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. I'm cool with that.
Well, go ahead. Can you just talk about that experience while I'm looking for it?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so I had, it was really an amazing experience. It's very bizarre when you try to describe it, but I was taken into what seemed like it was like a non-human experience, but I don't know that I would call it extraterrestrial. It was maybe like something in between life or something, but we were definitely like in a future technology kind of place, might have been between lifetimes kind of place. And I was going through these places and seeing some of this technology. There was these things that people had that they could put on their heads, that came out of their heads, that they could, was technology that could connect into computers, and they were doing things and stuff coming out of their hands. And I was leaving a building and I thought I was going to walk out, but as I was walking out, this flat board comes underneath me, and it's a flying piece. And so I fly out, and then and then you come up from behind me, but you're not, who you are. Here are, we are, we're some kind of non-human thing, and it's kind of like these beings where it's like two squares, white squares that are on top of each other with like little stick arms and legs, but it's like this really sweet kind of life form. And we're the environment that we were in, it was just kind of like it was like all these different levels. We were just kind of flying around. We found a place to land where we could, because you came up towards me, you said to me, I know you. And I looked at you and I said, I know you too. And I called you Churdy. Your name was Churdy, but I knew it was you. But
Right.
you obviously looked very different. But when we had a chance where I could see myself and you, we looked a lot alike. We were almost like twins, but we were, little block people.
You like how I made you with the emojis, two white squares, and we were holding hands?
I didn't see that. Oh,
You didn't see it? It's awesome. Okay.
And then, there was a group of like 13 or 14 others that came around, and we knew that they were also souls that we knew. But it was just such a high technology place. We were just kind of taking it all in. There was like literally hundreds of levels. It wasn't like, you know, like, you know, 1 floor, 2 floor, 3 floor. It was just hundreds of levels. It was, you know, it was almost like an air world where, you know
Wow.
what I mean?
I know
Maybe
it's got to be hard to describe
life,
how.
except it was very hard to describe because yes, it was like little floating pods that you would land on. You know, there wasn't anything, you know, solid to anything that you would call ground. It was, and everything was so much more advanced technologically. It was really, really beautiful there. Everything was really bright, and it was just really, really, you know, it's funny because you had sent me that email. I wish we, you know, I was hoping to hear about, you know, the fairies and all that stuff. And, you know, it was, and I said, I totally get what you're saying because it does sound so weird. But at the same time, it was just as cool as that.
Yeah.
You know, in
Yeah,
some
when you're in
respects,
it.
even cooler because it was something I've never seen before. You know, it was just this place I've never seen before, and it was definitely a non-human environment, but I definitely didn't feel like I would call it extraterrestrial either. It was
Wow.
something I've never seen before, experienced before. It felt like something possibly that you've experienced in between lifetimes, and there was just so much you know, so much technology. It was kind of overwhelming.
Wow. That's so
um,
interesting. Well, at least we were having fun and everything was benevolent and positive, you know? That's the
yeah,
best part. Yeah. So I found
very
that
positive,
part of
yes.
your book. Do you want me to go ahead
Oh,
and read that?
sure. Yeah, sure.
Okay. I'm going to do my best. Here we go. So this is Marilyn, an excerpt from her book. What's it called again? The title?
Principles of the world beyond death.
Okay, here we go. My presence did not appear expected this night at the Galactic Council, the highest council of civilizations around the universe. My journey would begin with a local universe group originating in Washington, D.C., United States. It was one of the most highly top secret gatherings in our world. About 200 dignitaries had come from around the world, but the Lord bid to take me on a journey of such profound intensity, I can scarcely tell of it or restate it to those among the living in our world of mankind. Someone was there who represented the holy priesthood of the Catholic Church, but I knew him. He had aborted his mission with the Lord and our galactic allies months ago. He was shocked to see me at a meeting of such important caliber. Because all of the current attendees were men, it seemed odd that I waited there to receive my leave from the Lord to speak. Before I could speak, however, my spirit was whisked to a room below ground. Down there was an alien life force being held down by ropes and ties on a hospital-like bed. Odd in appearance, I knew him to be a member of our federation. He had a long 2 to 3 foot spout for a nose. His skin was amphibious and looked pink at the moment. He was riding and trying to break free from the ropes, but something was wrong. There was a reason that God had allowed me here at this top secret galactic federation tonight with full consciousness and memory about to take place. In the distance, I could hear her. She was a dark one and she was hissing, but her hiss went above the din of normal, ordinary waking world. And in the din, no one could trace that her hiss was sending a dark wave of transformative power throughout the building. She had taken our ally captive, and he was turning a bright red. I knew this to be very serious at the moment, but not yet why. Within moments, I was again taken upstairs to see that our galactic brothers and sisters had arrived from all over the galaxy and the universe. I was no longer the only woman, but I knew that I was here because I was aware, I was conscious. Many others were in a deep state of unconsciousness and completely vulnerable and asleep to what was about to happen. It was my job to bring the in breath. Going back downstairs, I began to blow the Holy Spirit upon the alien. He stood upright, had a normal face except for his 2 foot long spout like nose, and he was wearing no clothes. His sex was not obvious. He was a species, his species had a pot belly and a long tail. As I blew the in breath upon him, he began to change into the shade of light blue, which I knew to be the correct and holy understanding coming from the energies of the Holy Mother of God, the Blessed Virgin herself. This other creature, the human formed female of demonic origin, was suddenly multiplying into beasts of various kinds and huge insects, spiders, and bugs. We raced to the upper room where the gathering was taking place as a battle began to ensue beyond my wildest dreams. It went on for hours before the outcome could even be predicted, much less known as fact. The beast had already begun to turn into serpentine slithers through the crowd while I still had to await my command from God, allowing me to act. I was quiet and sitting in a corner, waiting for this word, when a man of very high stature in the Galactic Council came to me and told me that someone wished to speak with me. Walking over to a table of the top scientists in the human world, they were at odds, unable to differentiate between good and evil. The beasts were coming their way, and they had to make decisions fast. Conveying to them some words of importance, I noticed that the man who had aborted his mission with the council upon the earth was staring at me as I spoke to them. He could not yet understand why I was being given such high authority and such importance in this discussion of the utmost significance for worldly affairs. Neither could I, but I did as I was told, and nothing more and nothing less. The men of science were listening intently to me, and they understood my words. As they did so, they began to turn a light blue of the power of the Virgin Mother of God. But the beasts had already begun their work through the room, and others were turning dark red and a violet color of the beast. Use the out breath, I shouted to them as we all began to move around the room, carrying within us the holy breath from the Virgin Mother of God, and sending it outward until its effects were clearly seen in the transformation of the colors these various men and creatures from all over the universal spheres of God's kingdom into the holy color of light blue, the color of the Blessed Mother, the Holy Virgin of God. Walking over to a group of guards and officers, I was able to distinguish a demonic packet of blood within the pocket of the source of this demonic infestation. A single man with contamination towards destructive sexual energy beyond the goal. He had denied his mission for sexual temptations. I was disgusted. He had taken every guard down with him, and this way, the way in which the demonic woman and her beasts had entered into his highly secret and vastly important galactic organization. Rather than guarding the holy grail of universal peace and unity, they had been taking the lifeblood of woman that they lusted after by playing games of lust and sexual desire with those who came through the halls, but had no business learning of what lay beyond them. I took in the breath and began blowing upon the source of this madness and upon all whom he had taken down with him, and slowly but surely their colors turned from the brightest of reds to the light blue of the Madonna. This procedure continued throughout the room as I was shown various vices that had taken down members of the Galactic Council who were like blistering bellies of sin covered in a red inflammation that was infectious all around them. It was frightening to see because the demons multiplied around us as quickly as they could be breathed upon by another. Fortunately, so in the outbreath of the Madonna that I and the scientists carried was equally powerful, and those who turned light blue from our intervention also began to also multiply and breathe upon one another the outbreath of the great and holy Madonna, spreading the truth among our brothers and sisters, mirrored in and lost in sin. He who had aborted his mission, I would not again see this night. My work was intense and extremely exhausting. I knew I must leave to no creature this eve left in the mirror of the inflammatory sinful state. Each of them had fallen for different reasons. One of the deadly sins or another stemming from one of these, but none could stand against the outbreath of the most holy Virgin, the Madonna. Let me make it clear, however, that this was not an easy task. This outbreath was exhausting my soul, and every one of these took a different amount of time and wind. Some of them stayed inflamed in sin so long I thought I would run out of breath before their conversion could commence, but I never did, even though I came close many a time. She was not just an earthly Madonna. For this I was sure. She was a being of great magnitude in the universal spheres and the worlds of the galactic heavens, every world. For a moment, I remembered seeing her arrive aboard the Pleiadian spaceship as the Lady in Light. In this moment, I knew that her power was quite beyond our world. But I had not time to contemplate it. For some reason, I carried within me her outbreath. I couldn't explain it, understand it, or even ask of it. But somehow I knew that I was connected with her in a profound way, and my duty was great. With this duty came a great responsibility, and no one under my care could abort a mission of such magnitude. It was unacceptable. I understood. So I carried on, and my brethren all followed suit in carrying on. It was a battle to the very end as I came upon a priest I had recently been made to know. It was shocking to see that he was covered in the blackness of something I could not identify, because I had seen his holiness upon the ground already. But I blew the outbreath of the Madonna upon him, and he took upon him the colors of light blue. In that moment, I knew something of great importance beyond my ability to comprehend. It was made known to me interiorly in that moment that my work in the world was quite unseen, but it was absolutely beyond description in its power. The outbreath from myself had converted this priest, but how I knew not. But I did know that I was the instrument. This shocked me, and I must not give up. In the world, my outbreath would remain unseen, but here in the world of spirit, this outbreath was determining the destinies of those upon the ground. And those who took the in-breath upon themselves were thereby converting more and more souls to the outbreath of the Holy Madonna. It literally took us many hours, and I saw so many different creatures from so many worlds. But we fought the good fight, and in the end, the beast was taken captive. I breathed him in, as his manifestation had lost all power of deception, and his beastly creatures and the she demon had all transformed into one body of himself. As I breathed him out, he had turned a pale blue and lay before me lifeless on the ground, his eyes open a tiny slit. Everybody, the hundreds and thousands in the Galactic Council, had been transformed and reawakened somehow to mission. And they knew that they had fallen from grace and had allowed themselves to be lost in the mirror of sin. Our great work must continue, I shouted. We all know of its importance. It was a vast, vast importance, and it cannot be explained in human words, but we all knew it. Shouting at the beast, I said, "Go on, then, you disgusting creature." He did nothing but lay there as if mortally wounded. "Shall I beat you more with the soles of my feet?" I shouted as I took my foot and roughly placed it upon his head. "Shall I beat you more, beast?" He was surrounded by the entire Galactic Federation, all the souls who manifest in worlds around the universe and are working together towards the peace and unity of all God's creatures. We were the best among the best, the most powerful among the silent powerful of God's unseen workers in different worlds. We were the top secret agents of God who were holding worlds and peoples in place despite their own wicked choices and decisions to follow sin, destruction, vice, and wickedness. Wickedness. It was our moment to confront the beast who dared enter into the holy confines. Our council declared holy by the Lord, chosen by the Lord, consecrated and consumed entirely in the Lord's service. "Speak, beast," I shouted in disgust, "before I spit you out before your own wolves in sheep's clothing and allow them to devour you as I would devour you before God if he gave me permission." I looked towards the guards who had fallen to the temptation of lust and anger. They had allowed our protection to be compromised. Suddenly, permission from God came through me in a giant gale wind of the outbreath from the Madonna through me. I felt as if my own spirit would be depleted by this outbreath, but it came out in a monsoon wind which took the beast by a total surprise. In his compromised position, he was battered, abused, and tormented as he was whisked into infinity and disappeared into the hands of God to receive what he might so deign. He disappeared in the spot he had lain, and I and my scientists looked upon our brothers with great seriousness and foreboding. No words were exchanged. They had all turned the proper shade of light blue, indicating their royal servitude to our Lord. But I and my comrades showed anger in our faces. We were the quiet ones in the group, and these were not accustomed to hearing us speak or having us dominate a meeting. But they stood there in shame as they knew of their sins and their evil, turning away from God by taking in the outbreath of the enemy. Know this, came the voice of God from the heavens as I listened. Know this. Falling to my knees, I shouted, I will know it, Father. Suddenly my spirit stood upon Mount Sinai as wisdom was being transferred into my etheric substance energetically. And as this was happening, an angel appeared who carried a beautiful pitcher filled with heavenly nectar. It was pink, and she poured and poured and poured it down my throat as my spirit seemed unable to absorb enough. But after several minutes, she was gone, and I had now been transported to a small gathering of people. I didn't notice the older gentleman sitting to my right until he got up to leave. He was wearing the garb of a regular person of his age, but when he stood, I suddenly recognized him. It was Pope John Paul II, and he turned to wink as he stood to leave. He didn't speak. I had not recognized him quickly enough, but it was clear that he was trying to show me his ordinariness outside of his Pope's garb, and that it was clear that he would not be noticed in a crowd if he were dressed as a common man. Something was important about this, but I didn't have time to think about it because I was whisked quickly through the galactic heavens and back to my earthly abode. Moments later, I awakened in shock. I had spent 7 hours with the Galactic Council, showing something of which I'd only been shown tidbits of over the years. But now I'd seen it in its entirety, and I knew my responsibility with them. There would be no more excuses. I must go to my brethren and get to work. Beautiful. Wow. That's intense, huh?
Very well written, and you did a great job reading it there, Sherry.
You
There was a
did,
few
yes,
times
you
that I was like,
did.
oh, I would have jacked that up right there, but you did a good job.
Thank y'all. I mean, usually I don't read that well. I mean, something was helping me, I think.
Yeah.
I pressed myself. Wow, Marilyn, that had to be intense, huh?
It
So,
was intense, and one of the things about it was that it wasn't something that I'm allowed to do very often because I'm not a regular member of that. And so what was important about it was how close that had come. You know what I mean? How close it had come that time to um, something very disastrous happening with the council, the Galactic Council, and how we have to be so aware of how we're right on the edge, um, not just as humanity, but also that this applies to other worlds as well. The purification.
And it's nice to know that there's people out there on our side that can help us too. Like, like you. Like, I do think that a lot of people do a lot of special work, in other realms. Some
Yeah, they
people
do.
probably don't even know about it.
oh yeah, it's all unseen.
Right. There's a lot of people who don't. Yes, that's right. And one of the things about that experience too that I think was important to note was that once each person was taking in the galactic breath, the breath of the Holy Mother, that they became able to also do the same. And so it's really important that we realize that too, because whatever we're doing then multiplies. So it was a real eye-opening experience. And one of the things that I know Our Lady of Fatima spoke about how the biggest sin that we all fall from is lust. And I guess it seems like that might be the case among extraterrestrial races too. I mean, who would have thunk? You know what I mean?
Right. Yes.
We don't think that. I wouldn't have. I was pretty surprised to see that. And how close it can come. How something like that, an infection, can spread like that. and how dire the consequences can be of something that seems so seemingly inane or innocuous. And but you also see how when spirits and souls work together, and then we build on each other, because as soon as one gives the breath to another, and we're all giving the breath, and then it was winnable. It was able to be restored. So that's one of the things you see a lot in the spiritual realms, and you see that a lot with the prophets, saints, mystics, and sages throughout the ages. You see it in their ancient sacred texts, but you also see it like in a lot of the mystical experiences that I've had with them, that this is a common theme, where we have to realize that this is something that goes on and is always kind of going on, the battles between principalities and powers, but also the battles, just the simple battles of our souls, and the little things that can take us down. You know what I mean? Little things that can just distract us and turn us away from things of much greater significance. We may not even be aware that it's happened. And that's kind of what happened at the Galactic Council. They weren't even aware that it happened.
Yeah.
Gosh, we see that over and over again, and just to make that connection back to just our 3D life too. It seems that we activate one another too in that same way that you talk about the breath. Like we come together, we realize there's others that are like-minded, that are fighting the good fight, trying to raise human consciousness into something better. And and it's kind of nice to come out of the woodwork and start to find people, of like mind like that.
Right. That's so true. That's really well said too, Shane, because it's that, and then it's also the importance of being aware of the opposite, where we want to be aware when either ourselves or other people we might even, we don't even see it in ourselves sometimes, where we might be leading people and creating a negative thrust. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so, everything we're putting out is either going forward or backwards. And so we want to create the forward motion.
Right. The forward momentum. Keep it moving that way.
Yeah, I thought that was so cool before you came on that first time, and I had that vision of Mary, and she looked like a statue, and then you told me that was common, and then like I was wanting confirmation. Well, I was trying to get an answer about if I should show you that Chaplet of Divine Mercy hand thing, and me and my mom had went to Sonic, and that waitress's name was Fatima, the little girl. And I was like, no one's going to believe this, right? So I still have the receipt because it says car hop Fatima. And I was like, oh, God. I guess
you can't make this up, can you?
No, I just live like that. I just get signs, of what I'm supposed to do, and leads me on my journey,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty neat.
Yeah.
But that experience was so intense, Marilynn. That's, so it just makes me want to just say thank you for everything that you do for us that we don't even know about.
Oh, but
a lot
of
people, on the other side.
Yeah, but like Shane is saying, this is just one example of what you're seeing. This happens a lot, and a lot of people may not be aware of it. It's not just me doing it. It's just that for whatever reason, God is allowing me to be conscious enough of it to make people aware that it's happening. And a lot of people are doing this even unconsciously. But this helps us to realize that these things are happening and how important they are, that they literally can determine, the destiny of worlds.
That's amazing.
It sounds like you're overreacting, but you're really not. It really is true. It really can determine things that big, so destinies of souls, destinies of worlds. And so when you realize that the delicate balance is that delicate, and that the little things that we might be doing, those little in-breaths or whatever that we're sharing with one another, that's spreading, every little in-breath that you're sharing, whenever you guys are on the air and sharing, every in-breath and out-breath that you're sharing, and then that's going to all these other people. These are the things that are helping to spread the energy of that transformative energy that needs to happen to prevent what we were seeing in that particular experience. You know what I mean?
Right. Hmm.
Right. Well, is that was that your only experience with the Galactic Council like that?
I've had other experiences. They're much more limited because, like I said, I'm not, I'm not like I'm kind of like a sort of kind of member, but not a real member. I was only called in on that time because there was a danger, and so I'm called in for spiritual warfare. So I
Wow.
was called in for spiritual warfare that time. I do have a lot of experiences with extraterrestrials, and I have little glimpses of different things and stuff, but I'm not a member of any of the council type things. So, I don't know anything about those kinds of details.
Right.
Um, a lot of what my experiences end up being about are literally maintaining the balance of energy in this realm and other realms of spiritual warfare. And as I mentioned before, also helping souls who are crossing over and going through afterlife journeys. Um, and also helping souls with, the reincarnation processes. Um, so there's a lot that I experience that really has to do with, these balances of good and evil, darkness and light, and
Hmm.
things like that.
Well, let me ask you. Let me ask you this.
So the
This is interesting because you say you helped with the reincarnation process. How far did that go? I mean, you hear about people setting up their life and who they're going to go and what lessons they're going to learn. Is this the sort of thing, or what was it like for you to help with the reincarnation process?
Well, with the reincarnation process, you're setting up. It's not just me. It's a lot of different, souls and spirit beings who are working with souls. It's a very complex process that goes on many different levels before a soul comes in. Has to do with how you're going to figure out who's going to be, your parents, your children, and all these things in relation to which karmic issues that have to be resolved. And there's always real specifics, for people who are interested in really understanding how that's set up. I
Hmm.
highly recommend a series of books by a mystic by the name of Francisco Candido Javier. He lived from 1910 to 2002, and he wrote a series
Dang.
of books. It's 12 books. It starts with a book called Nosso Lar. He was a Brazilian mystic, and his books really outline in great detail the process that souls go through, not just in reincarnation, but also afterlife. They also did a movie about his first one, which was Nosso Lar. The movie is named Astral City. You can rent
I
that on
saw
YouTube.
that.
Is it
Did you?
good?
Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Yeah, this guy was a profound,
I wish there
profound
was more
mystic.
movies like that. Yeah.
Yeah, the rest of the series is even more astounding than the first book. It goes into a much more detail about how these different lifetimes are set up based on the previous lifetimes, the karmic stuff that they're coming in with, the different dynamics between souls, who killed who, you
Wow.
know.
Well, how did this guy
I
get the
mean,
information? Was it out of body as well, or was it? What'd you say?
he was different. He was a spiritist. In Brazil, there's a huge spiritist tradition, and there's a little bit of merging with Catholicism. So he was pretty much a practicing Catholic, but he was also a spiritist, and so he did automatic writing. But and a lot of these, I don't recommend a lot of these things, but his writings is one that I feel is extremely important, and I
Hmm.
recommend him highly.
And it's
Yes,
Frances. Can you say his name again for me?
Francisco Candido Javier. Very, very holy man, and he did a ton of work. He has a huge body of work. I don't know. He wrote like 248 books in his life. You know,
Wow, that's awesome.
he had a huge body of work as well. You know, there's a lot of work that was done that you might find interesting, even by like Alan Kardec, who codified a lot of the spiritist um, teachings and guidelines, which, if you read like the gospel according to Spiritism, you're going to learn a lot about what they have discovered and what they believe to be the case about karma, reincarnation, and how these things are set up. It's very, very close, very, very accurate work. He lived in the 1800s, and he's actually one of the pioneers in this stuff. There's a lot of things that you can find out. There's a lot of different processes in between lifetimes that involve purification, that involve the soul has to go through periods of where they have some levels of understanding, but then you're going to have to also set up a new dynamic, because they're going to have to go back to the earth to do this again with the souls that they had incarnated with before. And you have all these energetic constructs that have to go in place. So these are
I'm sorry.
these are not things you can really like put into words. These are actually things that are done energetically to the soul before they incarnate, and
And it's very complex because now you're talking
Yes.
about, you've got all of these souls, they all have lessons they're trying to learn. So then the scenarios given to where you're like, well, you're going to be the husband, you're going to be the kid that gets beaten because you got to learn something about forgiveness and abuse because before you did this and that. And so you got this, I guess a soup of things that need to be learned and people, and then they come up with this sort of scenario that you play out, but it's got to have the free will element of it, right? So that, I don't know.
Yeah,
There's sort of,
Oh, go
like
ahead.
for instance, usually it's not set up so that you're planning to have someone be an abused child or something. But
okay.
many people will come in and they will not do what they had agreed to do before they came in. And so a lot of things go wrong when we do reincarnation, because people will
Stray
just
from the
not do
plan.
they stray from the plan. Yeah. So they do things that they're not supposed to do. They can completely de-energize an eternal plan. They can go down a karmic path. They can totally turn to a dark path. People can actually end up accumulating more karma rather than actually working on putting away some of the old karma. So there's so many different configurations, and ironically, Javier is probably the best person in terms of really kind of encapsulating that in a way that people can understand, because it is very complex, but you really do have so many things, and it's you got so many things that are happening there. You could have karmic configurations with 5-10 different souls that it's not just you and your spouse, it's you and the parents, it's you and the 5 kids.
That's
It's
what I wanted to tell you about this, Marilyn, because look, you're gonna freak out when you hear this though. I have a friend that okay, so she was like raped violently when she was like 14, and she wanted to have an abortion, and her parents fought for her not to. And so she did not. And so she had this child, and he was mentally ill. And he grew up and everything, and he was like violent, and there was she had all kind of just a traumatic, raising him, all the stuff that went on. And at the end, he wasn't living with her because, he had threatened to kill her and stuff. And he ended up being with the parents, and ultimately he murdered her parents like 2 years ago. And so she was taken to a place, and it was revealed to her that it was like a soul contract. And that, interestingly, it was like the 2 people that saved his life were the ones that he took their life in the end. And but she was shown much more things that were like a lot deeper than that and stuff. And she was like I don't know what council, but she was before a council when they explained all this to her, and it relieved all of her, wondering why me and all that kind of stuff. She just felt
Yeah.
so much better for it. And her
Yeah.
parents were there and had told her that, look, don't be upset. This was our job. It was our purpose. And that, and I mean, it gave her relief. But, it's interesting because I have that friend with that boy. And then my brother-in-law, I'm sorry, my son-in-law, his brother is mentally ill, like in the same way. And then my first cousin, my mom's son, is mentally ill, and he also murdered 2 girls. And it's funny, they all have biblical names. It's Daniel, Michael, and Aaron. But I actually gave my friend the best present ever. I had gave her a little dream pillow. She was having some nightmares, and I gave her a dream pillow with a Archangel Michael. What are they called? You're gonna know what I'm talking about. Not a pendant, but it's like the coin. What's that called? Where some people bury them in the corner of their house in the property. It was Archangel Michael, huh?
Medals or no?
Yeah, metal. Just a metal, I guess. I'd got it
Okay.
from Edgar Casey's place, and
Oh,
his name's Michael. So I put it in a little pillow, and I told her to remember that, on the inside, that he is a beautiful angelic soul, and that, this is just the outside of him. And it was the thing that I said it a lot better than that. Okay. But it meant a whole lot to her when I gave it to her and stuff. But so she had went through a whole lot, and it was all had to do with stuff like what you're talking about. That's what I was trying to say.
yeah.
She also wrote a beautiful poem about mental illness that is amazing, and I'm gonna have to send you that. You'll like it. It's really good. Okay, I'm done.
There's another book that was done by a woman named Rebecca Springer called Within Heaven's Gates, and it's a journey in heaven, and it's about a woman whose son, I think, killed her, but it's a beautiful story about her journey in heaven. I don't exactly remember how it was received. Yeah, but it's a very well written, beautiful story. And there are quite a few of these types of things, and you'll find this, in a lot of the Javier books. You're going to see a lot of these different configurations and things where, bad things happen to good people, and a lot of things don't make sense like this. Because something like that would happen to your friend. I mean, that poor woman, that's just a horrible cross to bear, and there's
She is one of the most beautiful souls.
for what she's going to learn when she crosses over about whatever that was, but yeah, there's a lot of these kinds of things, and one of the things that we do is we work with one another through our different lifetimes. And in the books that I wrote, like the Mysteries of the Redemption and the follow-up books, it goes through how we remember our past lifetimes. And part of the purpose of that is it helps us to see some of these patterns, and we start seeing some of the patterns we have with people who are in our life now. We see some of the things that we've done over and over again. And then we start seeing, then we start seeing, okay, so I see that this is the pattern of the problem. And then I see these are the different ways that I solved it, which apparently none of which worked. Okay, so I can cross this and this and this, so you start being able to start assimilating, okay, and not all of our karma is as serious as that. Some of our karma is, more lame, like,
like little things, but still there. Yeah.
Things. And, and that's okay. But, some of us have heavy stuff, some of us have less heavy stuff. But it's all important,
Right.
And so we start remembering those lifetimes. We start bringing that memory back. There's an energy that comes with that memory that helps us to bring forth these elements that it's like the memory of it, the emotions, the memory, the love, the fear, the terror, the a
Like
lot
the
of times
Akashic
when people,
record on it or something. The whole
yeah,
enchilada.
yeah, and those moments, they give us a chance to start with this purification that um, helps us to start assimilating. There's a whole process through the mysteries of the redemption, going into the initiations and the mysteries, where you're actually working towards this regrouping, where you're actually going to bring yourself back in alignment with all of your past lives, the knowledge of all of your past lives. It's an initiation into the mysteries. It's an important one, where you that knowledge is no longer scattered. It's not like you're just one little separate cell anymore. You're taking in the knowledge of all of those times, and
Oh, it
that's
gets like all integrated into one specific person
exactly.
version of
Exactly.
yourself.
Integration.
Yeah.
And that's what's really important. And then we have to go into those processes of discrimination and discipline, which is where we learn more about obedience, the moral code, ethics, vices, virtues, things like this, because this is how we bring our will into the subjection of God, which is how we start learning to undo some of this karmic impulse, because we can't really understand the karmic impetus in our lives until we start bringing our will into the subjection of God's obedience. And that's going to be where we start understanding how we have been hurting ourselves and others, sometimes and many times, without even realizing it or understanding why we keep doing it. Because a lot of us are in what we call karmic ignorance. you know um, there are different levels of consciousness. There are people who are in a state of evil actually enjoy causing harm, but the majority of humankind is in what's called karmic ignorance, which means that they may cause harm out of ignorance, but they don't do it intentionally. It's because they don't understand what it is that they're doing that's causing the harm.
Forgive them, for they know not what they do, right? Isn't that
Exactly.
what Jesus was
Yeah.
talking about?
Right. It's when you're dealing with the forces that do know what they're doing, which is evil. And that's when you're dealing with spiritual warfare and a whole different animal, and you have to
Right.
have a totally different. But when you're dealing with the majority of what people are dealing with their karma, it has a lot to do with becoming awake to what it is that we're doing, understanding our own pain and understanding the pain we generate in others, that we may not have even been aware of, not just in this life, but in others. It sounds like it doesn't sound like the most pleasant process. It's not, but it is a very fruitful process, and it's a very worthwhile one. It's something where it is worth all of it, because the fruits of it are this glory of God, this glorious realms of God that become opened up to us by going through and doing that work of scrutinizing our souls and trying to become holy as He is holy, and rooting out those things, those fetters that are holding us far away from our beloved, which is our Lord. And we don't realize that these things that we hold on to are holding us away. They keep us away from our beloved. That's, we think, well, I don't want to do that. This sounds so boring. This, you know what I mean? Or whatever, or I don't want to do it. It sounds stupid or whatever. That's, these are the things that are keeping us from our beloved, the whole thing that we're after. And so, we have to do the dirty work and get down in the mud of ourselves, and when we do that, it is worth more than gold, because that's when the skies open.
You know what? It's so funny because I got chills right when you said gold, because just before you said gold, I got the whole imagery of the crucible. How the gold goes into this pot, and it's heated and it gets it's hot and it's melting it and it's uncomfortable, if you're in the
Yeah.
crucible, but it's getting the impurities out. And I'm getting that. And then you mentioned gold right after that. It was a total synchronicity with what was going on in my head. That's cool.
That is cool. That's very cool. And it is. It's uncomfortable. No one's comfortable with it. It wasn't comfortable for me. It's still not comfortable for me. But I'm at the point where I know that that it's worth it.
Oh yeah, it's
Because,
like we grow so much more during the trials and tribulations.
yeah, and it's like what we find is that by being in denial about the things that are holding us back, we just waste time. We're not doing anything. It's not giving us anything. So if we just okay, let's just get right down to it and just go pull it out, and it's going to be painful like a Band-Aid, but it's going to get me there faster, and I'll be there sooner. It's worth it. It's worth it. And
That's totally true. Yeah, that and it seems like if you fall into the victim mentality, that holds you back and slows you down. But if you can sort of get beyond that, realize there's a lesson to be learned. What is this lesson? And kind of go at it optimistically like that. It seems like you progress through what it is you're supposed to be learning at whatever given time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree.
It's going with the flow. It's keeping that momentum you mentioned earlier going.
Yes.
It's
You have
not
the
kind of
momentum.
hampering. Right.
You've got to keep the momentum. And we have spiritual journey. And so what does that tell us? We have to learn approach. And so that's going to be different than what we're accustomed to. But we can all do it because God created us to take this journey. So there's us that can't take that path. He knew he was creating us this way. So he made the path. So we know we can take it.
Absolutely.
There's a design to it all.
Mm-hmm. There really is, and it's fascinating to see, because I hear from so many readers who then, subsequently take this journey, and there's this design, and everyone seems to follow a very similar path, and we reach to God, and God reaches back.
Very good point. Yeah.
He does, and it's instantaneous, and but we have to do the work. We have to be willing to do the work. One of the things that I think is one of the biggest killers of the spiritual path is like the goalless journey, in terms of, I guess the goalless is not the right word either, because but some of the types of paths that say that you don't need to do anything, you're already there. And it's like, well, that's true. That's a Zen kind of thought. That's true. However, God did put us here to do something. We have things that we need to be doing to move closer to Him. And so if we just think we're already there, then we're kind of like missing the obvious, which is that we incarnated, which in and of itself tells us that we're not. So, you know what I mean? Just the fact that we're incarnated tells us we're not there. That tells me that, hey, I'm here. That means I've got stuff that I need to figure out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we don't want to be spiritual teenager know-it-alls, right?
Not any shame in that. I mean, it applies to every single living human being, because we're all incarnate. So, it applies to all of us. There's no shame in it. It's just that, just having that simple understanding of you're incarnate, therefore you're not there. We have to do something while we're here. Don't think that you're supposed to do nothing with the time that's been given us. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? There is a journey that we want to jump into the movement, is what there's a movement that is always moving between heaven and earth. You want to jump into the movement. Don't just stand over here by the side. Jump into the movement and let God move you through,
Surf those spiritual waves, huh?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, that's
Well,
a great subject for this one. This was fun. We can have you come back on every once in a while and go over a different book like
yeah,
that.
it's
It's a
such an
great
interesting
message.
topic, especially for a lot of us
Yeah,
that have been, grew up Catholic and stuff too. So, you know,
yeah.
It was
it's really
nice.
nice. Well,
Did you grow
awesome.
up Catholic?
I
We
grew
moved
up Protestant.
also.
Or
Oh,
did you say me? No,
Okay,
I grew up Pentecostal, and then went to like
okay,
charismatic, and then
okay.
kind of went into Presbyterian, which was probably the closest to Catholic I've been, even though they're starkly different. But I mean, it's the
Yeah,
closest.
well, they're
And
different, but not terrible. Presbyterian has some closeness. There's some similarities, you know. Those
yeah,
similarities, you know.
right, right, right. And then I went to Seventh Day Adventist, and then more, I
Ah,
guess, more Gnostic sort of Christian. Where everybody's sort of on their own path, kind of a.
yep,
And so I'm kind of there somewhere.
I like the way of
yep,
Edgar Casey. I like the Essene stuff a lot.
yep,
You know,
Mm-hmm.
so,
yep,
but I
yep.
think there's something to be taken from all of them, though, and ultimately, then you can
I
kind
do
of find
too. I
connections and
agree with
all.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, me too. I agree. Yeah, it's like the more open minded you are with stuff like that, you'll realize that you'll find parallels between beliefs, which sometimes expand your conscious awareness of it, because just looking at something from a different perspective can be so helpful. It's like the
Yeah,
same teaching but delivered in a completely different way, and you're like, oh, and it kind of helps you have a more rounded. I don't know. I think any kind of expanded learning, is going to expand your consciousness. Whether you subscribe to, maybe the dogma of the religion or whatever is a whole nother thing, but there's always something to be learned if you're willing to listen, I think.
yes, agreed.
yeah. I agree with that. I agree with
Yeah.
that. And I'm a big fan of studying all of them. So, which
Yeah.
some people think, and a lot of people think is pretty weird, but I really think a lot to be gained by looking at the prophets, saints, mystics, and sages of all of that as a body of knowledge. I mean, they are a body of knowledge.
Just like how
Mm-hmm.
the
They were.
Swedenborg stuff contributes. It's the same
Mhm.
kind of thing. I love his stuff.
I'm a huge, huge Swedenborg
Me
fan.
too.
I love
Me
Swedenborg,
too.
and like you mentioned the Essene, and Shane mentioned the Gnostic stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned something else that I also. What was the other one you mentioned?
And
Was it me?
You mentioned I liked as well. Yeah, but there's so many different. Yeah, all these things are. They're almost like different flavors and
right.
tastes of, and it's all important. I think. You know.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that always gets me is when people look at God like he's angry, or like if you go out on a limb to find God, he's going to break the limb off on you or something. Sort of like he's out to sort of get you. You know what I mean? And it's like, dude, this is like a holy parent that loves you. If you fall, he's going to pick you up. He's going to support you. If you're reaching out to him, why would he break the limb off on you? So I always tell people, be adventurous and follow your heart, and don't be afraid to seek God, because if you're really seeking him, he's going to reach back at you. You know what I mean? He's going to reach towards you, and you will find him. So.
Yep. Yeah, that's absolutely true too. And I've definitely seen that in the mystic. One of the things that I tell people is that the second that someone calls out for help in the mystical realms, whether it's in the hells or the purgatories, is the second that help is sent.
Um,
It's literally that fast. And so, yeah, it is absolutely the truth. We don't always realize it because, in the realms of time and in the physical worlds, we may not receive it like that, but you can definitely see it in the mystical spheres, in the out of
Mm-hmm.
body states. You see that when someone asks for help, and you see this too, like in the people who've had near death experiences. The minute that they call for help, the minute they go get on their knees and pray or ask for Christ or whatever, that it's that fast.
that's
Yeah.
what I
It's
did
instantaneous.
with my hospice patients. And I've had a lot of them be afraid to die and talk to me about it. And I just said, look, everything's going to go just fine. But if it doesn't, just remember, just call out for help, and someone will come, an angel or Jesus or a family member. someone will come help you and guide
You know, it's funny that even in the very natural way, you know, people will get so down, like they might not ever think about God or anything like that, but they'll get so down in the dumps, hit rock bottom, and then they finally cry out for help, and they get it, and they have this wonderful experience. And then I've realized, you know, tell people you really don't have to wait until it gets that bad to ask for help. I mean, you really don't. You can ask the moment it starts to kind of get bad. Ask for help then. Don't let it get so bad you're like hitting rock bottom though. You know, because it's always
Yeah.
there. It's always available. We just tend not to think about it until we need it really
Right.
bad.
Yeah, we
Right?
can ask for help even when it's not bad at all, you know? Yeah, you know, we can ask, you know, one of the things that I'm a big fan of asking for is asking God for the graces that I need to just fulfill what he wants me to fulfill at any given moment. You know,
Mhm.
we don't have to be even having a bad day to ask
Yeah.
for help. But if you are having a bad day, then, you know, go for it, you know, and but you know, at any point, literally, you know, you don't have to be in any particular state to just ask, you know. And of
Right.
course Jesus always said, ask and you shall receive. And it's a very literal statement I have found, you know, in the mystical
I agree.
experiences I've had. It's very literal, you know.
Yeah.
You don't think it's that way, and then in the mystical you're like, wow, I guess he meant that really quite literally. Okay, cool.
Yep.
You know?
Totally. Well, I guess a lot of people
That's
have
neat.
that mentality. It was the guy who was in the food court at the mall and he lost his daughter wandered off and he couldn't find her. You're like, God, please, I'll go to church Sunday. I'll do anything. Just please, just help me find my daughter. I'm worried about her. Oh, never mind. There she is. You know what I mean? It's like so often we're like that, you know.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much, Marilyn, for coming on, and Sherry for having her back again. And thank you guys. I always have. It's just like a fun chat for, you know, an hour or whatever. So
Great. Thank you guys for having me
Oh,
back.
yeah.
I love talking to you.
Yep, we're gonna find
Yes.
something else to talk about next time, and because we got to keep having you come back. There's 90 books. 90.
absolutely, and we do have
90 books.
and we do have Marilyn's links down below. So check out her books, and we'll definitely have her back really soon. Thank you guys in the chat for being here, and those watching this later. And thank you
Yep.
two ladies for being here. Lots of love to
Oh,
you.
I love y'all.
Yeah. We'll see you
All
at
right.
outofbodyprep.org.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and out of body. Keep hanging out with me, Marilyn.
Okay.
Okay,
Real chirpy.
good. Okay, Agnes.
That's right, outofbodytravel.org. And let's see, we also have her YouTube link below, so definitely check out her link.
Go listen to those interviews, y'all. That's my favorite thing to do.
Awesome. We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Hey, love y'all. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
If you'd like to support the work I do, go to paypal.me/UOTF. Thanks.